On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA is a dynamic podcast that brings together some of the most influential voices in the nation.
From union leaders and elected officials to law enforcement experts who explore the pressing issues shaping America.
Through thought-provoking conversations, we empower listeners to think critically about law enforcement, political policy, and the future of our society.
Available on Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and all Suffolk PBA social media platforms. Tune in to On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA.
Welcome to another episode of On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA. I'm CJ Hunter, the treasurer of the PBA.
I'm Tanner Brandemar, the Sergeant at Arms of the PBA.
And today joining us is Lou Viscusi. Lou is the president of the Suffolk County Corrections Officers Association. Thanks for joining us, Lou.
Thank you for having me.
So just for everybody out there watching, tell us a little bit about your role with the Corrections Officers Association and who you represent.
Okay, my name is Lou Viscusi. I'm the president of the Suffolk County Correction Officers Association. We represent currently 862 active members, which work mostly in the correctional facilities in Yaphank and Riverhead here in Suffolk County. We also take part in a lot of the task forces with other law enforcement agencies here in Suffolk County on a federal level as well, and state task forces. We are primarily responsible for the care, custody, and control of inmates that are remanded to the sheriff in Suffolk County. We work closely with Sheriff Toulon and the administration in ensuring that we have safe working conditions and try for proper staffing, which I'm sure we're going to get into a little bit later today. I've been president for a little over 10 years now, and we just settled a new contract, and I'm very excited for the future.
Well, congratulations on your contract. I know that's going to help immensely with your recruitment and retention issues. And, we talk all the time about our recruitment and retention issues in policing, but you face a lot of the same obstacles with the corrections officers.
Yeah, we've definitely been going through some tough times. We have our numbers have declined in taking tests. We had a high of probably around 2011. We had about 7,200 people enroll for our exam, and most recently we were under 600. And a lot of that is due to the long salary scale. It was 12 years to top step, the low starting salary, and a variety of other issues. A lot of the new criminal justice reforms that came out of Albany make, jail be slightly less desirable than it used to be. Not saying it was ever desirable. However, we could touch on some of that stuff later, but like the inmates, there's very few consequences for their actions and whatnot. But we are, very excited that we have had a test that just closed out for September 6th. And we increased our numbers. We have 2,000 people signed up for that exam, and we will be able to finally properly staff the jails here in Suffolk County. So my members are excited. I'm excited, and the future's looking bright.
That's huge for your members.
Yeah, that's great to hear that, settling this contract right before closing out the exam signups, you were able to see a huge increase in your participation for the exam.
Yeah, we had just 28 days from the day that we signed the contract to the closeout of the exam registration. And we went from 441 signups and all the way up to 2,000 just in those 28 days. We partnered with the county and the sheriff's office in a robust advertising campaign. We had our billboards out there advertising. We were on social media ads. We did printed media, and it was on News 12 and radio. We really got the word out there because, we worked closely with the Romaine administration, who understood that it was really just a waste of taxpayer dollars to continually train people for them to just leave and go find employment elsewhere. We have a 17-week academy, which is, just a little over 4 months. And we're investing so much in these individuals for them to just leave at the next opportunity that comes around. So the Romaine administration really understood that, and they decided to invest in their workforce here and, make it so that this is a long-term career option again, which we're all very excited.
Yeah, that's great to hear because it's really important to have the unions and the administration working together, because even though they're on one side of the negotiating table, you're on another side, we do have a lot of common interests, and you want your officers to be safe in the jails. You want your officers to appreciate the career they have working for Suffolk County, and Suffolk needs to be able to attract qualified people to do these jobs in law enforcement, because you guys play a vital role in the whole rehabilitation process and the reintroduction into society for a lot of these guys. So you have a tremendous role in correcting these actions for people.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misconceptions into, what happens in correctional facilities and whatnot. And I tell everybody, just throw out everything you see in Hollywood or on TV, or really anything you see in the media about other correctional facilities, because we are really an anomaly. We're kind of state of the art here. And we understand that when the inmates leave our custody, they're most likely going to return to our communities here in Suffolk County. So we want to turn out a better product. We want to make sure that the people that are being discharged from our custody have better opportunities and have the resources to go out and make a better go of life and not just resort back to a criminal lifestyle.
Become productive members of society.
Absolutely. That's what we all want. We all want to live in safe communities, and we don't want, to turn out people that, the same way that they came in. We really want to give them the resources to be better themselves.
Especially because all of us live out here too. I mean, you don't want the crime to keep going up and up. And I'm sure even with your new contract and the financial impact of keeping your members there instead of having them leave over the long period of time, the county actually saves money by investing more in the people that are there.
Absolutely. And I think that was key. We had tried to get that point across to the previous administration, and it just didn't, they made some changes, but it didn't resonate enough. But early on, Ed Romaine and his administration really got it, and they saw how we were losing people after we invested so much in training them and them to leave, not just to other law enforcement groups, but we were losing to the private sector. We were losing to Costco or CVS or Amazon. We were even losing to just a no job just because people couldn't afford to pay the childcare on what they were paying to start with us. Not only that, the forced overtime, we have mandated shifts, really makes it difficult to have a normal lifestyle. And when you're not paying people enough to compensate for that change in lifestyle, they're going to go somewhere else. So this was good. We have a $60,000 starting salary for the people taking the test right now for next year, and it goes up from there. We were 12 years to top step. We're down to 8 years to top step, like you guys are, and it's really it's a livable wage here. We could always do better, but we're very happy with the attention that we got here, and we're grateful for their cooperation.
Very well deserved.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Definitely. And it's great to hear that the county is so receptive to the issues our members are facing. They're taking, whatever the biggest complaints are, whether it be the starting salary, the length it takes to make a livable wage in Suffolk County, or the forced overtime, right? The working conditions, the environment.
Yeah, the forced overtime is really something that I think a lot of groups don't fully understand. I know that you guys just started with the mandated overtime in your last contract, but it's for us, we've been 4 or 5 straight years now where it's just been relentless. You're working basically, so we get scheduled 5 8-hour shifts, but at least 3 of those shifts, you're working 16 hours every week. And it would be fine if it was for like a month or 2 or 3, even if it was just like the high months of the summer. It's 12 months a year. And it's just impossible when you're trying to, we look for younger people here. Obviously, the physical agility is a big part of, the physical requirements is a big part of being a correction officer for what you may have to do on a daily basis. So we attract a younger group. And the pay was so low, we were obviously only attracting a younger group because you have to be living at home to afford to live on that salary. And these people are starting out trying to have normal relationships or build a family. And it was just impossible. You miss out on kids' birthdays or ball games and stuff like that because you're literally leaving. You're like getting ready to leave. It's like, oh, you got to stay another 8 hours. There is no like 2 or 3 hour overtimes. It's just 16 hours. You work 8 hours and you work another 8 hours. And it's really hard to manage, and it's hard to keep a healthy relationship because your partner has to understand that as well. So, I applaud the membership for enduring it for so long, and I'm happy that the end is coming soon.
That must wear on you guys. 16-hour shifts, like 3 times a week, 12 months a year.
It really does. And then you have, all these state agencies and stuff that overlook the jails, and they try and, sit there like you guys. You're the Monday morning quarterback in your job as well. And it's like, you got to take into consideration, I'm here for 16 hours. This incident happens at the end of my shift. I missed out on my kid's birthday. And now you're going to sit here and nitpick. Oh, you didn't dot your I here or cross your T there. Right. And it's like, we're human too. And we get mental fatigue.
Well, you get the keyboard warriors at home that are just sitting there on their computers, just swiping up and seeing what's on TikTok or what's on Instagram. And they're sitting there all day, relaxed in the comfort of their house. When you guys are working 16 hours, like you said, it's a big difference.
Yeah. And it's, 16 hours I don't even want to say it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's not just 16 hours. It's 16 hours. Then you have a half-hour drive home. You have to try and get some sleep, maybe eat a meal, maybe see your family. Then, you got to get some sleep, take a shower, put on your uniform, come back and do it again. So you really only have like 5.5, 6 hours at home. And then to be, criticized on every step that you take. It's definitely, that's why we're so grateful that there is relief on the horizon.
Right. So, and those 5.5, 6 hours at home could be between midnight and 6 a.m. when your kids are asleep anyway. You don't even get to see your kids.
Absolutely. A lot of it is. And, it's hard. Or if you're, if you work 3 to 11 and then you do a midnight shift for overtime, you come home and it's 7:30 in the morning and your kids are at school.
Right.
And you don't see them. And then you're back in the car at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to go back before they even got home from school.
Right. And you're trying to get some sleep during the day when, maybe your neighbors are mowing their lawn, right? It's very difficult.
These are all very real situations that we've been enduring, and it's been a tough go, and we still have it rough. We have another class starting September 1st, which is going to be a substantial class, to be 64. But that's not the end of it. We have another 100 that we're going to hire next year. So by the end of next year, I think that we'll be at optimum staffing. For right now, we are at least excited that there is some relief on the horizon. Some people love the overtime, but those people are very few and far between these days. The newer generation, they just want to work,
their hours.
Yeah, right. A lot of the younger people, they want to work their 40 hours a week and be home. They value their time off more than the time and a half overtime.
Yeah. And I'm not saying they're wrong for that. I mean, I worked a lot of overtime when I was first starting, but that's just because of my situation. I needed the financial resources to, buy a home and raise my kids and stuff. So for me, that's what I had to do. And that's what I did. Other people, they have a different lifestyle, and whatever it is, we kind of have to cater to the generations that are coming aboard, because that's who we need to do the job.
Right. So, yeah. So now you've achieved a lot over the past year or so, settling in contract. Hopefully this addresses your recruitment and retention issues, but you also didn't do it alone, right? You're part of a board and you have a great team there. We see, Rob and Rich all the time. Will was a great asset to you too. He stepped away to spend more time with his family, justifiably so. I'm happy for Will. We do a lot of work together, and we partner on a lot of issues, and we see you guys up in, not just here in Suffolk County, but we see you guys up in Albany all the time too. Yeah, no, I absolutely have a great team. Myself and Rob and Rich are full-time release, and we represent the members, 24/7, as you guys know. There are a lot of days that I see you guys more than my family, right?
But it's all right. We're out there doing the work, and this is just part of representing the membership. And you mentioned Albany. There's so much that happens in Albany that impacts us directly here. We've seen the negative effects on a local level with things like bail reform, and in the jails, the HALT. Initiative that came out of Albany. We have to be a voice up there for our membership. And I feel like we are a very loud voice, but still collectively, the representatives of correctional facilities in New York State, I think we're lacking on trying to get more of a group voice. Suffolk County, I think, definitely does its fair part as far as, getting the message out. But I think if we mobilize together better, we would have more success.
Do you guys have a coalition of New York State corrections?
So we don't really. We have a local group that we partner with: Nassau, Westchester, New York City, Rockland County, Orange County. And that's kind of newly formed, and we lobby together because we have, a lot of similar interests. But then there are things that, affect other people differently. New York City has the city council that, guides them and sets their rules for their facilities. So sometimes the fight is a little bit different based on the facility. Some of the upstate facilities are very small, and they don't have the same problems that we're dealing with here. We do have Sheriff Toulon has been the sheriff for 8 years now, and he's running for a third term right now, and so he's started to have more of a say in some of the Albany issues, through the Sheriff's Association. Also, they reach out to him because of his experience, not only here as a sheriff, but, in his, I think all total 40 years in law enforcement in his time in the city and his time out here in the county as well. So we have been developing avenues to get the word out there and try and advocate for our membership. But as you guys know, the politics in New York State is not easy. Suffolk County, I think that we have a lot more reasonable people here. Even our state representatives in Suffolk County are, I think they understand the needs of the people in Suffolk County. Some of the representatives upstate, I feel like we live in different worlds at times, and the messages that they spread.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we preach it all the time. In Suffolk County, we have, the local Democratic Party is not what you see on TV nationally. It's not what you hear about from New York City. Our local Democratic Party have common sense electeds involved, and they're more of the working class Democrats that you sometimes think about with like JFK, not these, I hate to say it like this, but basically these far left liberal pro-criminal lifestyle people that just make everything easier for the criminals rather than for law enforcement.
Yeah, I agree. We're very fortunate here in Suffolk County, and it didn't happen by luck. Obviously, right. We work very closely with the elected officials in Suffolk County, and we try to educate them on what we do, and look for partners in that, and we choose people that we think are good representatives of our way of life here, and we put our resources behind them to make sure that they continue to maintain their office. But upstate, it's just a different world.
Yeah.
You said pro-criminal. It's some of them actually are former criminals themselves who have used that as a platform to get themselves elected, and then 100%. Just try to move their agenda forward in their newly elected office.
I know, 100%. And I hate to say pro-criminal and try to give somebody, maybe give somebody out there a soundbite that they're going to use, but it's true. It's true.
Yeah, it's and we are not anti-criminal per se. Like I said before, we are here to provide resources.
Correct. Exactly.
To get people a better chance at life, to get back on the right track, and to, leave that criminal lifestyle. We don't want to see criminals perpetuate that lifestyle. We really want to, get them on the right track.
I really want to emphasize the fact too that like a lot, like you're saying with a lot of our elected officials out here, that they're willing to speak to us and to you guys. I think a lot of that has to do with how much you keep them informed and educate them on what's going on in the prison system. Like you guys are at everything. Like we were saying, like we see you guys all over the place, and that it's constantly keeping it on the elected officials of what your concerns are with your membership and what's going on in the prisons. They're pretty aware because you guys let them know what's going on there.
Yeah, and we've seen changes in the state correctional facilities and some of their laws that we've been able to get carved out of here that we, explained why that would be harmful to us or it's not necessary here. And we're proud to have those elected officials that are able to advocate on our behalf on a state level to save us from some of the unnecessary policy changes that New York State is enacting on some of their state groups, like New York State Corrections or some of the city groups or whatnot. We stay in constant communication, and I think that's the most important thing you could do. I think if we would have been able to communicate with all of the state legislators, the Assembly and the Senate, I know we did a good job here of our locals, but if we could have had one group meeting with the stakeholders before bail reform, we wouldn't be in this situation. I think that they haphazardly made this, rule change. It wasn't even a vote. It was through budget. That's the other thing. They knew it was wrong, so they made a policy change through the budget. It wasn't like a standalone bill. I think that if we could have collectively sat down with, the 62 senators and 140 something assembly people and actually explained what was going on, because everything that we said took place.
It was predictable.
It was. And it's, some people may have thought that it was like, oh, the sky is falling when we were saying it. it all unfortunately came true. Right. And here we are still trying to unravel and pull it back. And, we have been, successful collectively as a group here, with some of our local officials have been a part of repealing some of the bail reform changes to, get back to some common sense things that, are now bail eligible.
I hate how they do that, putting stuff in the budget to pass certain bills through the budget, because it almost offers that bill a shield, and then they have to vote on it upstate. So
yeah, no, it's shameful, honestly, because they know that they're doing it for a reason, because it wouldn't pass on as a standalone. So they'll say, hey, if you want all this good stuff in this section, you got to vote for that too. Right. There's also in there. It's unfortunate, but that's politics in New York State.
Okay. Now we talk about the revolving door of justice all the time, right? The way the criminal justice reforms, bail reform, has affected our members out on the streets. How has it affected your members inside the jail?
So it's been a weird road since the beginning. When bail reform first got enacted, it was in the April 2019 budget. It technically wasn't supposed to go into effect until January 2020. But the judges kind of knew, like, all right, well, this is going to happen. So they started enacting it sooner. Mm-hmm. And we saw a lot of decline of our inmate population. I spoke out against bail reform because I live in Suffolk County. My kids are in this community. I don't want unsafe communities. That's why I spoke out against it. We were criticized like, oh, you just want more people in jail. I can tell you right now, if we had 200 less people in jail, I'd have less forced overtime. I'd be a happy man.
Right.
So that never has come into play. But we did see our count come down, and you would think, oh, that's great, less people, but it was most of the minor crimes that we still had the violent people in there. And then, we had more violent people concentrated together, because if we have less people, we condense housing areas and stuff. And then so it didn't really help our situation within the jails. And also, I think it was unfair to the offenders themselves, because when you come in to our facility, we are a world of opportunity. If you get arrested on some, drug-fueled crime spree and you just get turned back out to the streets 6 hours later, you never have the opportunity to detox. You never have the opportunity to avail yourself to the programs that we offer. And you never have the opportunity to get back on the right path. If you go out 6 hours later, you're just going to go look for your next fix and continue on. And you're going to get arrested again and arrested again and arrested again. And we started to see, by like mid 2020, that what they were doing, they realized, that the criminals themselves realized, if I rack up 5 or 6 charges, either way, I'm only doing one sentence. Mm-hmm. They're not billing them as consecutive. They run them all concurrent.
Right.
So it really didn't matter to them if they got caught with 15 shoplifting or 3 shoplifting charges. And we started to see inequality of life. We saw small businesses suffer. We saw, our regular community suffer. We saw a rise in people lifting door handles and stealing stuff out of people's cars overnight, because they knew the consequences weren't there. And they knew that if they were caught, it was all going to get rolled into one.
Right.
And they didn't care. I really think that some crimes, absolutely. I think Suffolk County, we had a good system already, where if you got arrested for a minor crime, you were back out on the street. If you got arrested a second time, you were back. Third time, you're probably going to, go in for a couple of days.
Now there's a pattern of behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But we already had a pretty good system here. I will admit that in some jurisdictions, if you got arrested for jumping a turnstile in New York City in 2016, maybe you shouldn't have been incarcerated the first time. Maybe, and then also in Suffolk County, we had a system where the judges would look at, all right, even if this person gets convicted of this, they would be out in 30 days. So it's been, 14 days they were in jail. They're coming back to see me. I'm going to ROR them this time, because they're pretty much at time served anyway.
Right. They're almost there.
And I think in other jurisdictions, they didn't look at that stuff. And it was just too much traffic, too much volume coming through them for them to have that. And you'd have people sitting in jail for 60, 80, 100 days on a charge that they would only do 30 if they got sentenced for, or 60, which is unfortunate. So there was a need for change. But I think that it went too far, and I think it went in the wrong direction. Personally, the way bail reform, worked. If Tanner and I committed the same crime and he had $10,000 to bail himself out and I didn't, I would sit in jail, which is unfair. But if it was a dangerous crime, I think we should both be in jail. And let's assess, based on the dangerousness of the individual. And I think that's what we have judges for. And I think we should have judicial discretion. And when we see the repetitiveness of the same person in and out, I mean, you guys have arrested people the same time twice in one day.
Yes.
The same person twice in one day. There's a problem here that they need a little time out. They need a pause. So we are that pause, and we are not just a timeout. We are a wealth of resources. And when you leave us, I don't know if we have the START program also,
right,
which Sheriff Toulon started. If, as you're nearing your release time, we will set you up with resources, not, temporary housing or benefits, or, we can give you clothing for job interviews. We can do mock job interviews. We can help you write a resume, and we can give you marketable skills so you can go out there and be a productive member of society. And some people will say, oh, why are we going to try and help, because they're all going back to Suffolk County.
Right,
if we don't set them up with temporary housing, they're going to be squatting in your neighbor's house while they're away in Florida, and it's going to be a problem for you and your community. And it's the right thing to do. We are hoping that we turn out a better product. We want, the inmates that we take in to be productive members of society, and they cannot do that. Listen, they can do it on their own, but it's easier to do it with our help. So that's why we have that.
Right. Getting locked up, being punished for your crime. Yes, that's all part of it. But at the end of the day, you're corrections officers. It's a correctional facility. We want to correct their behavior so they can be reintroduced into society and be productive members of society. Right. Because they're going to be somebody's neighbor. They're going to be somebody's coworker. We want them to be able to live a positive lifestyle when they're out.
Absolutely. And that's why I said throw out everything you see in Hollywood or on TV, because we don't just warehouse inmates. We try to give them purpose. We have parenting classes in there as well. We have, a pretty good visitation system where, your family can come in and see you, and they have contact visits. We have vocational programs where you can learn a skill or trade, and that way you have a better opportunity of not just going back to selling drugs or shoplifting to pay your bills. You can actually be a member of the workforce, and a lot of the people that do leave, they're grateful for the opportunity that they receive. Some of them just go back to the criminal lifestyle.
Right.
We don't have a great.
Can't say everybody.
Yeah, we don't have 100% success
But at least the attempt's there.
Yeah, the attempt's there, and it's all about opportunity. And that's why I actually said it was a disservice to the criminals themselves during the height of bail reform, because they were never given opportunity. When they just kept getting arrested and released, and arrested and released, and arrested and released, it's a revolving door, and there's never any change injected into their lifestyle or opportunity. So we are that opportunity.
I think it's an obvious statement to say that with less criminals in your community, it's obviously better for the community as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. We all want to, walk the streets and have a feeling of safety and whatnot. And, I think that it's gotten better. It was really bad in the early parts of bail reform, some of the people that were let out, but, also there's still some work to do. Some of the reforms that came through from New York State, I think, were harmful to our safe communities. So you guys do a great job at policing our communities, but sometimes, like I said, you see them and then you see the guy back out the next day and doing the same thing.
Right. So, speaking of Albany and some of those reforms, one of the ones that affects your membership a lot more than it affects ours is the HALT Act. So why don't you explain a little bit about that and how the changes to solitary confinement have actually probably made the jails a little less safe?
Yeah. So HALT stands for Humane Alternative to Long-Term Solitary Confinement. One, I want to start by saying solitary confinement didn't exist in Suffolk County for decades. And in most correctional facilities, it doesn't exist and didn't exist for long before HALT became a reform. So it was built on a false narrative to begin with. Our confined cells for disciplinary people are the same exact cells that we keep our general population inmates in. They have the same availability for human interaction. They can speak. There's no, glass on them or anything. I'll bring up Hollywood again. You'll see some of these movies where they put you in this dark cement room and they open the door twice a day and throw food in or slide a tray in. Right. That just doesn't exist anymore. It hasn't existed in a long, long time. But that's the image that they portrayed in Albany when they came up with this HALT. And it's unfortunate because really now there is less of an incentive for people to behave while they're in the correctional facility. Like I had said, earlier, we try to reform people and get them on a better path. And some people are living a lawless life on the streets. And, we have rules because we have an obligation not only to, I have an obligation to make sure my members go home safe, but we all have an obligation to make sure that the inmates that go there and just want to do their time, that they get home safely at the end of it also without being harmed from other inmates. So some people do go in there and they try and prey on other people, and there needs to be consequences for that. We need to segregate to keep the rest of the inmate population safe. The HALT program has definitely handcuffed us in what we were able to do. And we've seen a little more brazenness amongst the inmate population because they know that the restrictions that we can put on them in their housing are lessened now. And across the state, there has been an increase in officer assaults and inmate assaults since the beginning of HALT. We have been pretty fortunate here in Suffolk County where we still have a decent setup where we haven't seen a huge spike in assaults here since HALT. But we also implement things a little bit differently. I don't want to go too much into that, right, but we can still, follow within the guidelines and keep everybody safe. And not every jail or correctional facility has the physical plant to be able to do that. We're an anomaly here. We have 2 facilities, which is a great start. We have, a state-of-the-art building in Yaphank, which was just built in 2011, and it has all sorts of new housing areas and technology. And we have a very understanding sheriff who is willing to not only implement new programs to keep people occupied while they're incarcerated, but also has the firm understanding that everybody has to go home safe. So he works with us to make sure that we still maintain safe facilities here in Suffolk County.
Right. And I think one of the things, like if some of these electeds who did push the HALT Act if they were to have that open line of communication with you prior, they might have been able to understand that this wouldn't be keeping inmates safer. It would actually increase the assaults on inmates. Because, you automatically think about assaults on corrections officers, but it has increased assaults on inmates as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think they use the media to sensationalize certain incidents. Right. What took place upstate a few months back is unacceptable. And that's, that was just straight out crime from what I saw. We don't do anything like that here in Suffolk County. And you can't make widespread changes based on
painting with a broad brush.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We should look at it facility by facility, see what resources and avenues that we have to get the job done and, make changes there. Especially here, we have our own elected sheriff. He has decades of experience in law enforcement and in correctional facilities. I think that I trust his opinion over somebody up in Albany who's never even been to our facility voting on how we should operate here.
Right.
So, and we, it's the sheriff and I and our executive board, we talk often where we give input, from the officer standpoint. And he's always, I'm preaching to the choir with him because he's lived it. He's worked the job and he knows,
Yeah, Sheriff Toulon's great. He's got an open mind to learn new things. Like you've already brought up some of the innovation he's brought to Suffolk County jails, but he's got the experience to understand what probably wouldn't work if you tried to make a change for the sake of making change.
Absolutely. I think the biggest, job, this is my 4th sheriff. And the biggest problem we've always had is just trying to explain what we do. Mm-hmm. But with Toulon, it was kind of just hit the ground running. DeMarco wasn't bad either. He was deputy sheriff. So he had a little bit of an understanding of he knew about the sheriff's office, obviously. And as far as the correction side, he had some interaction there in his role as deputy sheriff. So it was It wasn't bad, but even just like the general elected officials, they come in, we do screenings for legislators and stuff. They're like, "What do you guys do?" And, so I love that question though, because I love the opportunity to just discuss, what we do and get, tell them, "Hey, come for a tour. I want you to see what we do," because I'm proud of our operation. We actually have, some really good stuff. My one downfall is we're short staffed. Right. Other than that, we're doing great. So.
Yeah. I wish that more elected officials would probably take that tour, take you up on that.
Yeah. Our local ones do. I think all of our legislators have taken the opportunity here. Our state officials have all walked, which has been helpful, because when I speak to them about stuff, it's nice to have that vision in their head where they can kind of understand what I'm saying. And honestly, they've been very supportive, both sides of the aisle. Our Democratic legislators, our Republican legislators, and conservatives, they've all been very supportive of our needs here in Suffolk County.
Right. Now, you touched on a little bit, some of the stuff that happens upstate is different than how it happens down here in Suffolk County. There was recently a wildcat strike upstate. A lot of those corrections officers weren't satisfied with their working conditions, their environment, the safety within the jails. But it was not a strike that was supported by the union. It was not supported by the people that were elected to protect them. It was some of the members just kind of acting on their own. How did that affect our guys down here? Was there any sort of rumblings of guys saying, "Oh, good for them," or "Oh, what are they thinking? They're out of line"? How did that work down here?
So strikes are illegal in New York State, and I will never condone them. I understand why their union took that stance, and I applaud them. It was a tough situation. That being said, I fully understand why the officers did that. Like, they were getting no support. The governor's office kind of has their thumb on state facilities, and they're constantly, you see in the budget, like, close 3 to 5 more facilities. Right. It's not like here. You work in Riverhead or Yaphank, they're 15 minutes apart. If your facility closed down, you built your whole life around that facility. Your other facility could be 170 miles away in New York State. Right. So, it's a big change to people when you're closing facilities. And I understand as part of business has to be done, but it's not just that. The people who are coming to work don't feel supported. They don't feel safe. They had the rampant mandatory overtime as well. They weren't getting paid, a fair salary. So I fully understand why they did it. And to be totally honest, although I would never condone it, after the 4 years of straight forced overtime, just relentless, I think that we were close to that as well if we didn't have the hope on the horizon, because Romaine had signaled that he would address the issues. And I was able to let the membership know every step of the way, like, hey, we're making progress. And now we've finally gotten there where we're like, okay, we have a fair starting salary. We are able to attract more people. My members know that we have, 64 people starting September 1st. Right.
Help is on the way.
Help is on the way. Exactly. So we just have this small bridge to gap right now. Small gap to bridge. I don't know. I definitely understood why it took place. And I was grateful that my members were so resilient that they didn't resort to that, because it would have put us in a really, really tough spot. But we have a really strong group of men and women that work in the correctional facilities, and I'm grateful that they stuck it out.
Right. And it just further magnifies the importance of maintaining those relationships with our electeds locally and keeping those open lines of communication, because it's not like they didn't know what was going on upstate. They saw what was happening in some jails, right? And they don't want to see that happen here. They want to make sure that the workforce feels supported and feels like they're going to be given the tools that they need to succeed, even if it wasn't immediate, right? You had to get through a negotiation process, but now help is on the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And when that happened, Kevin Malloy reached out to me like, hey, how's things down here? Right. What are we hearing? And, because they were concerned as well. And, fortunately along the way, I had County Executive Romaine come to a retirement party and come to a meeting. He was able, obviously I want to be as optimistic as possible to my membership, but hearing it directly from the county executive, like, hey, I understand your needs and we're going to get there. Like, just hearing that kind of settled people down and kind of put them on a fair playing field where they're like, all right, we're going to get there. So
a lot of the issues you talk about go back to mental health. Again, like your membership especially with the forced overtime, being in the jails constantly, I'm sure the state workers as well, like that's a big burden to overtake on mental health.
It absolutely is. And, like I said before, it strains relationships. It strains bonding with your kids. Some of them are newborn kids, and you feel like, you just coming in, taking a shower, going to sleep, and going back out for another 16 hours. It is hard. And then it also depletes your body physically as well, like working so many hours. And, let's face it, jails, although we do our best to keep, there's germs and, you're exposed to more. And when your body is, operating on, consistently, 5 hours sleep, you're not exactly in peak physical condition. There's very little time to go to the gym and exercise, and your immune system may be a little bit affected. So it ends up being more sick time, which further exacerbates the forced overtime. But the mental health, we've kind of all collaborated together here. Not only law enforcement, just as county employees, we're all experiencing some tough times, and I'm excited to have the resources that we do have, but we need to do more. And that is something that we're all talking, with the county and with our respective departments about things that we can do. Unfortunately, a lot of it for us depends on the proper staffing. So I think that there's hope on the horizon for that as well. I think a lot of it will self-correct, but we really need to push the fact that getting, a therapist or a psychologist or something early on in your career, I think is a great step. You don't have to worry or wait until you're in some sort of mental crisis before you do it. Like, build that rapport ahead of time. Right. So that way, maybe you never end up needing it at that point because you're already talking through it and you have coping mechanisms to get you through those tough times. But if you do need additional help, you will already have built a rapport with somebody before you were in crisis. And I think that that's important. Right.
And I think a lot of the electeds are very receptive to the mental health aspects that we speak about. You see it in Albany now, right? The Assembly and Senate just passed the Joe Banish mental health bill. It's sitting on Governor Hochul's desk now, waiting signature. There was just some passage for the state troopers, right? That could create a new model as far as a mental health days and recuperation time after a critical incident, right? Because you can't necessarily be expected to go right back to work the next day after you're involved in, say, a shooting or some sort of critical incident that could really wear on your mind, right? So there is some hope out there. We're making steps in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, and you guys have been included in on it as well individually. We're all discussing this and we're all looking for solutions. And, this mental health kind of plagues the entire country, and really the world. It's not just law enforcement. We have, I think, a crisis, across all society, but it impacts us differently here. Being in law enforcement, some of the things that we experience on a day-to-day basis are things that are, unspeakable to the common citizen here. So I am grateful for the collaboration that we have with all the unions. And, we've all sat with the county exec's office and we're discussing things. Obviously contracts are all on the table right now, and we want to get through that. We don't want it to impact, anybody's individual contract negotiations. But I know right after that, we're all going to, get back to the table and try and discuss some things for mental health.
Right. And it underscores the value of the Suffolk County Coalition of Law Enforcement that we've built too. We all work together. We meet regularly. We screen candidates together. We make sure the candidates understand the issues we're having. And it just really magnifies the importance of our membership engagement too, and how our members turn out for our PAC events as well.
Yeah, honestly, it's been great, this brotherhood that we have and sisterhood, between all the county unions, and this, and I know Lou Viscusi's, a new president for you guys, but he never skipped a beat, out there on the political field and kind of, getting the unions together, made everybody feel welcome, especially in this last round of negotiations. We had to work together to get some things done, and he was very, very understanding, and I'm appreciative of that. My members are as well. So we work well together, and I think there's nothing we can't accomplish together.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of our members are very in tune to what's going on politically, locally, and up in Albany. And it seems your members are the same way now too. I noticed a huge turnout for your PAC events too.
Yeah, we've definitely tried to expand in that area. It's unfortunate, but something like bail reform comes along and it kind of opens your eyes. Like,
right.
Like, it's not just how it affects your career. Like, this is my community.
Right.
like, I have kids here. I want them to be safe also. So it kind of opened up people's eyes and their spouses and their parents and stuff like that. And they're like, wait, this is going on in Suffolk County now? Like, you just see stuff on the news and like, we think we're isolated out here. And like, oh no, this is here too. So we kind of, got everybody together and had some meetings and discussed the importance of, let's educate the elected officials and let's make sure the ones who understand our needs here in Suffolk County are the ones that we try to get elected. So that's pretty much our goal here. And I think, we've been on the same page.
The huge part of that is educating your members about how important it is to come out and support those candidates that support you guys.
Yeah, and it's not easy because of the forced overtime. It's like, hey, I know you worked 85 hours this week. However, I also need you to come out and give me 5 hours Saturday morning. So it's been tough, but I'm still actually impressed at how many people I got to come out the last couple of years just to make sure that we continue to put the resources behind the elected officials that understand our needs here. That's really our goal, and working with you guys and all the other unions. We have the deputy sheriffs, probation, detectives, SOA, DA investigators. We're out there probably, I don't know, every event together. And then, doing those walks together here and there are good. You guys do different days of the week than us, but all in all, we see each other in the streets, and it's great to know that we're all working towards the same goal.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And it's, like you've said it a million times, it's not just about our working conditions and environment, but it's about the communities we live in, because the vast majority of the Suffolk County employees live within Suffolk County. Yeah.
I think probably 98% of my members live in Suffolk County. Only in 2019, because of our recruitment and retention issues, did they allow outside of Suffolk County to be hired. Mm-hmm. Sammy Gonzalez made that bill in 2019. But, we still haven't seen many because the jails are both on the east end, Yaphank and Riverhead. So if you're driving from, Nassau County, it's pretty long hike when you're working 16-hour days. You got to drive an hour each way, but home. It's not easy. So, but we do what we can, and collectively, I think we do a great job as unions. Not only educating our membership, but helping to educate the public as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, well, we appreciate you coming on today. I appreciate the open discussion and talking about how a lot of the issues we speak about all the time are affecting your members on the inside of jails, as well as, how it affects our members out on the streets and how we all get affected as Suffolk County residents. Are there any other messages you want to get out there before we close up today?
No, I just, election day is coming up. I mean, mm-hmm. Everyone is in summer mode, but definitely, we're all over social media, all the law enforcement unions and AME as well. They have a new board there and a social media presence, but please look out for the candidates that are endorsed by the Law Enforcement Coalition, because, we all want public safety. It's job one here. So we look for the candidates that are definitely going to make our community safer and help us keep our communities safe. So, definitely educate yourself on the candidates, and don't just vote necessarily by a party line. Right. Vote for the individual. We do our job of vetting them to make sure that they support public safety and common sense here in Suffolk County. So please, follow us. And we all work together to make sure our endorsements are issue-based, revolving around public safety, not party line based. No, absolutely. Yeah. And we endorse, on both sides, both sides of the aisle. It just depends on the individual and where they stand on the issues that are going to keep our families safe. Exactly. Well, thanks for joining us, Lou. Thanks, Lou. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time.